Thank you very much, Wisdom. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. It's something that hardly ever gets said. I'll say today. Often, it is very much about who makes the call, who calls you to invite you to a dialogue. By that I mean that the networks that one creates in their workspace are very important. There is a lot going on, and one has to make choices about what conversations to take part in. Um, I want, therefore, to acknowledge the person that reached out to me, Jose. I would say yes to being invited by Jose, even to just think through things, because I know what she stands for, I know what her work stands for, and I believe in the kind of work that she does, supporting research in Africa and across the world. The second thing is about what company are you in? What company are you joining? And I very much believe in the work that this organization is doing, this consortium is doing. I believe in collaborative work. I believe in collaborative work between universities in Africa. It is a space that I have been in for a long time. And being also on the same podium with universities like University of Botswana that I worked with and am very much familiar with, have believed in its work for a long time, made me in the first instance go, okay, I'll do it. And then, of course, the subject, the engaged university. What do I know about the engaged university? I wanted to be at that discussion because I believe in the centrality of education to development. I believe that education can facilitate transformation and to do so avidly. I believe too that it is important that we keep looking at the mandate of universities and ensure that universities evolve. The engaged university, in my view, is a university that is development oriented, is international in character, and is globally connected. I definitely wanted to be at the heart of that discussion. I wanted to be part of that discussion. I wanted to learn more about that and obviously to share my own understanding, knowledge, and experience with respect to this very subject. So universities that are globally connected are universities that are not only aware, but are active. They are active participants in the global community. That means that they work with other universities within the continent and beyond the continent, within their own countries and everywhere else. Open universities, they are open to being connected at a global level. But they are also connected to the big issues of the day and seek to engage in the big issues of the day, whether it be issues of poverty, of climate change, issues about gender equality, issues about displacement, migration, and war, and seek to do right by citizenry across the world. How would they do that? They do that by making sure that with that knowledge, they then create vehicles for engagement, sometimes by way of creating consortia in the same manner that has happened in this particular case, or by pulling together groups of scholars to work together on the issues that need solutions. Scholars think and then they do. They can do that too by ensuring that the what is taught at the university, the curriculum, is broad. There's informal and formal curriculum. And that is why, for me, there's also that need to mention the international character, meaning that the university is characterized by a diversity in its constituency, diversity in terms of its student population, in terms of its faculty, and yes, in terms of its curriculum as well. Now, at the heart of everything that I do is an interest in Africa. And so I have paid attention to the historical movements of universities. And I've made the point at the forum that for me, the African university has always been an engaged university. I say this because African universities have never been innocent. They have never been ivory towers. When the first African universities were being set up, they were being set up in a globally connected way. There were universities that were set up as land grants, and so would actually be a partner to a university abroad, and were meant to ensure that issues such as education about agriculture, for instance, that would lead to people being self-sustaining, would have their own food, would know how to grow their own food, and those would be taken care of. There were universities such as Fura Bay, probably Fura Bay in Sierra Leone, the oldest, that were created as part of the diaspora's way of coming back to Africa. So it became somewhat of an outpost. Universities such as Sheikh Anta Diop that were created as a West African meeting point for young people across West Africa at a time when the winds of change towards independence were being felt in the air. Universities such as Mekgwe University, counterpart to, if you like, Sheikh Anta Diop, a university that was seen to be an East Africa hub for thinking, for looking at the developmental needs of the continent, and from which was to be set up probably, arguably, the best medical school that the continent was to get from that time on. And I want to believe that my career still derives a lot from all of that work that started then. So you see, not at all innocent, not at all disconnected from seeking to ensure that health provision, health services were meted out to the community. A university such as in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Dar es Salaam was known to be the hub for Pan-Africanism. That is where, any and everybody that wanted to go and immerse themselves in the ideas of defining Africa and Africa's independence would go. Walter Rodney, that connection too with the diaspora. So universities on the continent, I would argue, have always been engaged. And even when universities would seek to ensure that their staff looks at different performance areas, it would always need to be indicated that you did research, you did teaching, but that you also were community engaged. So that has developed over time simply to get refined and to be much more deliberate, seeking to measure all of those with that community engagement always being there, continuing to be relevant over such a long period of time. When a university is awake to the needs of its of humanity in general, because I also spoke about the global, being aware of the hot issues of the day and seeking to be a part of the solutions. When a university is awake to the needs of humanity and seeks to create that impactful difference, that positive transformation in the lives of its citizenry, as far as I am concerned, it is engaged. So it gives to the community. But perhaps much more important, the community is allowed to become a part of the university, has voice with respect to what kind of university grows, evolves. So in essence, it's not just about the university giving back to the community, it is also about the community shaping the university. The instance of the University of Botswana is actually a very interesting one, because the university was literally built brick by brick by the community. People that did not have much, they gave every little thing that they could in that campaign to build a university that they owned. And the university was to develop then into what one would argue was to be a developmental university, what we are now calling the engaged university, because it was awake to the needs of the community, but the community also, in essence, had a say, not just in the thinking about the university and perhaps what goes somewhat into defining what should be done within the university, but right down to actually the bricks and mortar of the university. So what I just spoke to right now, the University of Botswana, you could suggest that that is somewhat of a civil society engagement with the university, because here again, definition helps us a little bit. Often when we talk about civil society, we think about organizations that have been formally set up and have been registered, as it were. But civil society goes beyond that. It goes into advocacy groups, for instance, professional associations, those form civil society groups, churches, cultural institutions as well, even business sometimes. When the university engages with civil society, it gives to the community. The community also gets back the best. It gets back the best from the university, because the university is not working alone in that mythical ivory tower. The university is aware of the needs of the people. From, for instance, the need to, say, find a cure for TB, as the Africa Health Research Institute at UKZN is seeking to do now, and a cure, say, for HIV, which is also a problem, because engaging with the community, knowing what the community is going through, what the needs of the community are, means that the community and the community's needs then get to be at the center of the agenda for research for the university, or for aspects of the university, as it were. And so the researchers, the university, is able to then provide the community around it with that which is particularly important to the communities. General education, true, upliftment in general, true, but transformation, finding solutions, and essentially that meeting point between the community and the university, that meeting of minds, suggests also inclusivity, which is a critical component to the engaged university. So I would suggest then that the community does harvest a lot from a university that is willing to listen and to allow for the voice of the community to shape its agenda, as it were. Absolutely. Because communities are agents, they are not objects. And I think the university also gets a lot from allowing for that engagedness, for allowing for that meeting point. I like the meeting of things in general. I like that nexus point where different perspectives inform one another, because right there at the meeting point, I think is where you find utter fertile ground that can enliven us as community, as researchers in so many different ways, and humanize us, humanize the work that we do, and give it so much more meaning. Allow for the community too to get their dignity, in some instances, get that dignity back, because there have been instances where there have been those that have not been that sensitive to the needs of communities, who have sought to simply find answers, solutions to questions that they pose alone, and not necessarily pay attention to communities to hear their voice and allow that voice to shape the work adequately. I like the AAP. I've already suggested that at the beginning, and which is why I was happy to be a part of the panel. I like it because, as I said, I like the meeting point of things. I see it as representative of that meeting point, of seeking to ensure that organizations, different organizations, come together and that they strengthen one another with that bigger purpose of assuring transformation at various different levels across the education landscape on the continent and beyond. So the AAP brings together universities in Africa in a consortium format. They inform one another of what they are doing. They strengthen one another. They learn from one another. But the AAP also reaches out to other partners, such as AROXA, for which I am a board member. And AROXA is an organization that sits at the nexus point between academic research and civil society organizations. Through organizations of this nature that are already doing this work, I believe the AAP is able to extend its mandate and to ensure that the meeting points are not found just at the level of university to university engagement, as it were, but beyond that, to those organizations that have direct links to civil society. And AROXA is not the only one. The AAP may want to engage with other organizations, with other research institutes, such as the one that I was referring to, which is already working with the community. Because with all of that, and with the AAP being able to harvest from the different sides of engagement, looking at the different vehicles that are employed by different universities, because of course context matters a lot. And so different universities will use different vehicles of engagement and for the purpose of doing that service to the community. The AAP in 10 years' time will have a lot of examples of knowledge, of experience, and I believe would have archived all of that for the benefit of any and everybody who might be interested in making their university more relevant, more connected, more engaged.